Okay, this is the geometry checkpoint number 2 video. Please feel free to review it before the test on Thursday. Number 1 asks for you to state the slope of a line parallel to the given line. And if you'll remember from our notes, parallel lines have the same slope. And perpendicular have negative reciprocal slopes. So we want to state the slope of the line parallel to the given line. The slope is the number in front of x. So that's going to be 4. So a line parallel to it is going to have the same slope. So the slope is also going to be 4. Number 2, if y equals 2x plus 6 and y plus nx equals 4 are perpendicular lines, what's the value of n? Okay, so again, we're going to go look here at this perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. If my slope is 2, then my negative reciprocal slope, I'm going to have to take the 2, put it over 1. I flip it and take the opposite sign. So my new slope is going to be negative 1/2. But that's not the answer. That's if my slope is in negative 1/2 x plus b, or in this case plus 4. If you look at the original problem, it's on the left side. It's not in slope-intercept form, so I have to move it over. And that makes it a positive 1/2 x equal to 4. So actually, my n is equal to 1/2 positively, and not the negative that it is for the slope. Number 3, find the equation of the line that is parallel to y equals negative 2/3 x plus 1/9 and passes through the point negative 1/6. Okay, most people liked the slope-intercept form, or point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Since they're parallel, they're going to have the same slope, so I'm going to use the same slope in this line, that m is equal to negative 2/3. Negative 1 is my x1, 6 is my y1, and then I'm just going to substitute those values in. Y minus 6 equals, m is negative 2/3 since they're parallel, times x minus negative 1. That makes it a double negative, so I'm going to change that to a positive. Then I distribute negative 2/3. So I get y minus 6 equals negative 2/3 x minus 2/3. And then I would have to add 6. And I get y equals negative 2/3 x. And when I add 6 to negative 2/3, that makes it positive 5 1/3. You could put 5.33 repeating. You could also do 16/3. So those are just different variations of the y-intercept in different equivalent forms. Okay, in just a moment, I need to move it down. Okay, number 4, Andrew graphed a line on the grid below. What function or equation is perpendicular to the line Andrew graphed? Okay, since it's graphed on the graph here and it says perpendicular, that means I'm going to be using the negative reciprocal of the line. And since it's graphed, I'm going to pick 2 points on that line and I'm going to calculate the slope. So I'm going to go up 1 to the right 5. So my slope is equal to 1/5. So the perpendicular slope, which I have to take the negative reciprocal, is going to flip it and take the opposite sign. So that's going to be negative 5. So I can pick any point that I want because it's going to be perpendicular. And say I pick here. and I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to the right 1, that's going to be my line. So that's going to be the one perpendicular to it. So write an equation, and it doesn't matter where you go, but I know my slope is going to be negative 5x, and I picked this one to be plus 3. Really and truly, if you have the y equals negative 5x part in any y-intercept part, it's going to be correct. Number 5. If segment JK has endpoints at negative 5, 2, and 7, 6, what is the equation of the perpendicular bisector of that segment? Okay, well, perpendicular bisector means it's going to meet at that negative reciprocal. Bisect means it splits it in half. Okay, so we have 1/2 and it's perpendicular, so it's going to be a negative reciprocal. Okay, well, we have the information to work this out. This is going to be x1, y1. 7, 6 is going to be x2, y2. So first off, I'm going to need to find the slope of that line. And that's going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And that's going to be 6 minus 2 over 7 minus negative 5. 6 minus 2 is 4. I have a double negative here that's going to change to a positive. That's going to be 12. And that reduces down to 1/3. Now the fact that I know it's perpendicular means my perpendicular slope is going to be the flip and opposite of that. So my perpendicular slope is going to be negative 3. Okay, bisector. That means it's got to split right down the middle. So I will also need my midpoint. And we already know how to do that. The midpoint is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. And I already have my points labeled. So I'm going to have negative 1 plus 7 divided by 2. And I'm going to have 2 plus 6 divided by 2. That gives me 2 over 2. And that gives me 8 over 2. And if I keep simplifying, I'm going to have 0.14. Okay, so that means that 0.14 is on my line. That's the midpoint. And I know the slope of my line going through there is y equals negative 3. So I'm going to label this point x1, y1, and I'm going to use the point slope formula to get my equation. It's going to be y minus 4 equals negative 3 times x minus 1. I'm going to distribute. Y minus 4 equals negative 3x plus 3. And then I'm going to add 4 to both sides. And my equation is y equals negative 3x plus 7. This is the equation that answers the question. What is the equation of the perpendicular bisector of that segment? I know it's perpendicular because the slope of the segment is 1/3, and I take the negative reciprocal, and that becomes negative 3. I identified the midpoint, which is a point on that new line, at 1/4. And then I substitute that into the equation, and I get y equals negative 3x plus 7. Okay, number 6, suppose triangle BIG is congruent to triangle SAM. What angle is congruent to angle B? Remember that order matters. So if B is the first letter in the first triangle, then it's going to correspond to the first letter in the second triangle, which is going to be S. So if angle B, then it's going to be angle S. Number 7, triangle XYZ is on the coordinate grid below. Which set of ordered pairs represents the vertices of the triangle that is congruent to triangle XYZ? I would probably go ahead and plot my points. 1, negative 3, 5, 4, and 1, 8. And I would see if that looks congruent to my triangle. And one of the ways that I want to verify it, and I could see that it's not, it's definitely not the same shape. So I can erase that and try the second one. And I have 1, -3, 6, -8, and 0, -9, which is off my page. And that kind of looks congruent. Okay, so we want to check C. B was looked congruent, so I'm going to check that one off. We already know A was not. So at -6, -2, -2, -6, and -4, -8. Oh, I can already tell that's not going to be a congruent triangle. So I can eliminate C. That's definitely not congruent. And then I'm going to go with D at 6, 7, 8, 2, and 1, 1. And that kind of has the same shape too, if I could draw my lines correctly. Let's see, so that bottom one goes up 1 and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this one goes up 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so then that makes it not congruent. So the only one that really appeared to be congruent was B. Okay, number 8, triangle MNO is on the coordinate grid below. What is the slope of the altitude? That will be a new word that you are learning. From O to the segment MN. If the slope is a fraction, then change it to a decimal and round to the nearest hundredths. Okay, so altitude. Altitude is a new word. You will learn it by the time we take the test. And altitude is going from O perpendicular to MN. So I'm starting at O and going perpendicular to MN. So what would help me with this problem is to find the slope of MN. So I'm going to do the rise over run. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so my slope of MN is 6 over 5. And since the altitude means it's perpendicular, and this is the symbol for perpendicular, that means I need to flip it and take the opposite sign, which is going to be -5, 6. Well, that answers the question because it says, what is the slope of the altitude? However, it is a fraction, so I need to change it to a decimal. You should have a calculator available. If not, let's see, let me pull a calculator up. Okay, so then all we have to do is type in 5 divided by 6, and it's negative. Oops, I did it too many times. 5 over 6 equals, it gets -0.833. So if it rounds to the nearest hundredths, that's the second decimal place, so it's going to be 0.83, and that would be my answer. Number 9, the triangles are formed by 2 parallel lines cut by 2 transversals. So here's my parallel lines. Here's transversal number 1. Here's transversal number 2. Complete the proof to show that the 2 triangles are congruent. It's also marked here that these are congruent. So I have options. I see the vertical angles here. We always mark those. Those are not given to us. And since I have a Z shape, I also have alternate interior angles here. And that would actually give me angle, angle, side. Angle, angle, side. Now, there is another option. Because I have 2 transversals, these would also be alternate interior angles, and if I choose to select those, then I could also possibly have angle, side, angle. So depending on which pair of angles you see, I could prove them congruent by angle, angle, side, and I could prove them congruent by angle, side, angle.